Welcome back. I'm Tyler, you're watching Scarfing Scarves, and welcome to the 59th installment of last week Lolita News. At the top of the segment, Metamorphose has come out with a set from their basic series by the name of Majestic Princess that will include a JSK, rectangular headdress, and randomly selected blouse. The original version from 2016 marks a stark contrast between it and its 2019 counterpart. And said Princess's kingdom must be in a recession because it looks like they've sold every scrap of gold and pearl they could get their hands on, tacked a bow on the remains, and have pawned off the entire affair to the peasants in hopes of distracting them from the fact that they still live under a monarchy in the year 2019. Side-eyeing you hard right now, UK, pets are supposed to be small and fluffy, not some 93-year-old spinster you happen to take care of because she came flying out of just the right baby maker and landed on a silver spoon. Corgis, yes. Geriatric mascots, no. Either way, this set retails at $25K. There are worse things you could spend your money on, and for those looking for examples, this show is happy to introduce the single most ridiculous expenditure for Gothic Lolitas since the advent of expensive fence. It costs $1,300. It is a doll. And outside of taking the price of the Iron Gate JSK and doubling it, its sole purpose for existing is to sit on your bookshelf and adorn the body of a tiny creature who will never show you the barest scrap of affection, nor concern for the fact that you just blew a month's rent to obtain its soulless husk. So it's like a cat, but sadder. In a nod to the doll collectors out there who are ready to throw their cell phones out the window, I am aware that this isn't even the most expensive doll of this quality, but I retain the right to make fun of you without mercy, mostly because I have little else to do, and feeling superior to people who blow large amounts on little bipeds makes me feel better without all the work involved in personal growth or not being a dick for 5 seconds. Why elevate your life when you can verbally carpet bomb an entire community? And to get back to the task at hand, those of you salivating at the thought of owning your very own little mime man should know that this thing was sold via lottery style. Only 31 were made. And the show likely came out well past the entry date anyway. You're welcome. I've saved you the pain and suffering of convincing your parents you need a tiny representation of a schnozzless wonder for the cost of 1 week dialysis in a country that treats healthcare like an optional DLC at best. Moving towards wrapping up our new releases, Angelic Pretty has gone full Hobby Lobby. This series is covered in enough crosses to be exempt from providing birth control, and those of you who don't appreciate the dated nature of that joke can make like Flappy Bird, fly face first into a green pipe, and or disappear from the internet entirely for reasons directly related to crushing guilt, waves of addiction, and the insurmountable rage of people who can't make a fat pigeon fly straight for more than 5 seconds. Meanwhile, both the OP and JSK have sold out. And as that wraps up the new releases, nothing else of any note has happened. We turn towards last week Lolita News' next special segment, in which 2 people challenge the boundaries of human stupidity, also known as Another Monday in the Lolita community. Welcome to The Dumbest Thing I've Heard This Week. It all started on Instagram, and more specifically with an AP USA post about Melody Toys. A post in which Angelic Pretty mentioned that they were holding a Halloween party on the 13th of October, a party that required you to purchase a ticket and wear AP to attend, an expectation so standard you'd have to be willfully obtuse to take issue with it and or possess the brain power of a partially molded summer squash. Unfortunately for us, fall doesn't start in the US until September 23rd, and summer came out in full force with the following series of comments. We shall call them Becky and Bleakley. I want to note that both of these women are adults, one of which is in their late 20s, and for the first part, I will read what they said verbatim when talking about the Angelic Pretty party because someone else needs to suffer. Bleakley, let's go! Becky, yes, aw, I can't wear any of my Lolita, they aren't brand. Bleakley, wait, what? Is that a rule? Becky, seems like it. I looked online for the event, says your main piece has to be AP or whatever partner brand they specified. Bleakley, damn, it's like they're asking people to pay money to model for them at the Museum of Ice Cream and call it a party. I call bullshit at Angelic Pretty USA. This party is classist and discriminatory. I'll pause to allow you to come to terms with the fact that we are currently sharing a planet with 2 people who think having to wear Angelic Pretty to an Angelic Pretty party is a legitimate form of oppression. Moment of reflection over, because of course it gets worse. Because outright tagging the brand to call bullshit is not enough for them, Becky then accuses AP of being problematic. Bleakley claims she was going to buy knee socks there for her birthday and now won't. And Becky comforts her hypothetical loss by saying, at least you won't be a walking billboard for their product in the most Lolita at heart, Ida in practice thing ever to be said by someone who totes wears the fashion, you guys, and definitely hasn't cobbled together some scraps of lace and Converse into a closet cosplay rendition of EGL. Why would I even mention such a very specific concept? Hard look at Becky right now for no particular reason. Bleakley Bleakley takes the time out to agree. And you would think this level of frack-wittery would mean the internet is at maximum stupid capacity. Everyone can go home and sniff laundry detergent until it numbs the pain. At least we could have, had not a brave challenger saw that level of batshittery and said, I can talk sense to them. Said saint imparted that wearing a brand thing to a brand event is respectable at minimum, incredibly standard at most, and has been going on for years. And Bleakley, an absolute standard of frack-frickery on the best of days, launched into the following.
That may be a steadfast rule, but for folks who make their own, or people who are low income and are lucky to even have off-brand stuff that they have, it is absolutely exclusionary and classist. Especially since you already had to make a $25 purchase in order to purchase a $40 ticket to the event to begin with. How is it that it is more important to be respectful of a brand than your fellow humans? It may be tradition, but traditions sometimes have to evolve. Have you ever been excluded from something you want to participate in for reasons that were out of your control?
Those of you who stopped following once Bleakley took a right turn into Crazy Town should know that she is doubling down on the claim that wearing angelic pretty to an AP party is classist, implies that having to spend $65 to go is even more so, goes on to say it is disrespectful to human beings, and wraps up the entire shebang by asking the only sane person in the room if they had ever been excluded from something they wanted for a reason that was out of their control. So in short, acting like a giant toddler who cannot contend with the fact that a party is not a human rights issue on the level of access to food or water, and in the long version, a living breathing testament to far too much time spent on Tumblr before the site shot itself in the foot by removing the 90% of users accessing it for the sole purpose of whacking it to anything that moved. A side point, I know, but all I'm saying is that Tumblr is dead and its refugees have moved to Instagram. Getting back to the topic at hand, our sane saint returns to tell Bleakley that Lolita fashion Halloween parties aren't basic necessities required for survival, and saving up for a secondhand angelic pretty piece is an option. And Bleakley responded in a rant so outrageous, I don't know if I should summarize it to save you the time or quote it word for word just to take sadism and dial it up to 10. Those of you who know this channel are aware of where this is going, and Bleakley responds to our saint's implication that ice cream parties are not disaster relief funds and budget AP is an option with,
Well, thanks for clarifying that the event is only for a bunch of sheltered snobs. Do you realize how you sound in response to what I said? I didn't know the lowly community could be so elitist, yet I guess I am not surprised. And thanks for assuming what I can and cannot do and what is or is not out of my control. I am disabled. I cannot control what my body can and cannot do most days. You have no clue. I would have no problem with wearing an item, but it specifies it to be a central piece. I certainly wouldn't want to hang out at an environmentally disastrous country club with a bunch of rich pricks. So I guess if that's an accurate analogy, I wouldn't want to go anyway. This practice is discriminatory. I am being discriminated against, and I bet I'm not the only one. I am going to disengage from here as I don't want to have Loli be kind of ruined for me. And there seems to be no point in arguing. We live in different realities. I personally do not feel that I can support a brand like this, but will remain open-minded to anything someone from @AngelicPrettyUSA has to say about it. Should they want, enjoy the party.
what? Is it Lolita at Heart Bingo Night, or did this woman really just call everyone attending the tea party a sheltered snob, tone police the only sane person, say the entire community's elitist, scream that they're disabled like it was relevant, insinuate that the tea party will be an environmentally disastrous country club with a bunch of rich pricks that she doesn't want to go to anyway, but she's still being discriminated against even though she doesn't want to go, and then full-on flounce so that Loli won't be ruined for her before parting with she doesn't personally feel like she can support a brand like AP, but will remain, quote, open-minded to anything the brand has to say. The only thing that sparked any truth in her unhinged word barf was, quote, we live in different realities. I suggest her reality be regulated by prescription medication. And the only good thing that came of this was Bleakley's promised exit. God willing, they'll shake loose enough brain cells to forget how to type, and they'll never darken the doorstep of our elitist fashion ever again. That said, this was not over, because one post from our poor saint informing Bleakley that Lolitas would prefer not to be called Loli due to the whole pedophilia thing later, and Becky had gargled enough stupid juice to return to the conversation. Specifically with threats, because nothing wins an online argument quite like making baseless promises that you'll enact physical violence unless your opponent agrees. Becky barks that, quote, this Loli has no problem opening cans of whoop-ass. Becky is almost 30, and luckily for the well-educated, other people whose brains aren't made of Swiss cheese decide to join the conversation, take issue with the pair's overt whining, one commenter noting that Becky is acting pretty entitled, to which the lady that just threatened to beat people up on the internet responds with all the calm and grace of saying, "Bah ha ha, look kid, do you want some of this? 'Cause I'm really mean." Follows it with, "I will happily fisticuff with you as well," and finishes with, "For the record, my outfits may be cute and fluffy on the outside, but I'm from the hood inside. I don't play that 'you're acting so entitled' crap. What the fuck are you 10?" As if she isn't a mental womanlet whose sole contribution to the conversation is to bring the discussion down to the level of a playground scuffle. Is this the human equivalent of a cute but psycho t-shirt, or did Becky download her personality from a MySpace era scene kid with half the brain cells of a can of manic panic? A Canadian commenter rebuts Becky's threats by assuring her that someone who can't afford a $60 tea party ticket likely isn't booking any flights to Canada, to which Bleakly breaks her promise of leaving the fracking conversation to impart that she's going to address the Canadian to prevent personal attacks against herself. A quote, person who very regularly gets discriminated against, says everyone's being quote, totally classist, says it feels like Mean Girls, accuses everyone of coming from privileged places compared to herself, claims she really would have gone to the tea party, complains about getting reamed for a quote, honest mistake about how the event was actually run, which I should note is not the thing people are mad about. She didn't make a mistake. She willfully disparaged everyone going and called Angelic Pretty and the entire community classist discriminators. Continues on with how she just shared her opinion of the event and stands by that, says she wasn't talking about Lolita or its community in general, which is also a lie, and then launches into the biggest unrelated emotional manipulation distraction tactic this reporter has ever seen by spouting that she has been homeless, has no parents, and almost died so many times in a move which is one double-foot amputated conjoined twin in sub-Saharan Africa away from full Sarah McLachlan emotional terrorism. She is also not done. Bleakly has the gall to ask people to stop losing their shit over her shit fit that started this, stomps her foot while claiming that she did not overreact, demands we stop judging her even though she is fully comfortable with judging the entire community, says she gets beat down enough just for existing, which is obviously not true given how often she pipes up, whines a little more about how her ridiculous definition of classism wasn't taken with roaring applause, and ends this endurance test of a paragraph with the second flounce of "thank you and good night, final post" written in all caps, as if to imply it was extra trustworthy this time because she sure as hell didn't keep her word the last time she promised to frack off. That was a lot. Salvation is not nigh. And we continue with our friendly Canadian who told Bleakly's fleeing backside that it is not elitist to host a private event before jokingly questioning if we should boycott cons for making people pay to get in. Becky appears once more to white knight her flailing compadre by saying that a commenter who didn't appreciate their previous threats of violence should quote, straighten that spine of your. Becky does not proofread shit, and moves on to demand that the Canadian leave Bleakly alone and deal with her instead because she's quote, big and tough, has been to jail, and not everyone on the internet is a punk, before rounding with quote, I wouldn't need a ticket, I already live here, everything you say is so childish and pointless, cat emoji, so entertaining. Which is sissy trucker levels of what the frackery. Girl must have been in violation of her parole because she goes into hiding right after that. Angelic Pretty USA deletes their once innocuous post about Melody toys and ice cream parties, and the Lolita community survives one more day of idiot roulette, not a fatal bullet in the chamber yet, give or take the brain cells sacrificed by reading what just went down. That happened. I am out of fracks to give. And that's all the time we have for tonight. This has been Tyler. You've been watching Scarfing Scarves. And before you reconsider the edibility of borax in an attempt to forget what you've seen, you should know that I will be guesting at Delta HCon in Houston, Texas, September 20th through 22nd, YomaCon in Detroit, Michigan, October 31st through November 3rd, and OniCon in Galveston, Texas from November 8th through 10th. This show is sponsored in part by BB&B. They take faux sweets jewelry and hike the elegance up to 10. And you can find their amazing works at bbnb.net. Link to their shop below. And to wrap things up with a big fracking bow, I'd like to thank my patrons for making these meltdowns possible. You guys are the only thing standing between me and drinking to forget. And should you like to join their number, you can head over to patreon.com/lastweeklolitanews for more content, videos the public hasn't seen yet, and to watch this reporter slowly disintegrate into a pile of salt and spite. Thanks again, guys, and I'll catch you next time.